Welcome to the People Place, where we focus on learning from business leaders across the Chicagoland area. You know, I've personally found one of the best ways that I can learn and grow is from listening to other people's stories about their successes, about things, lessons they've learned along the way. I am Karen Kimsey Swart. Joining me today is Craig Wood. Craig is an accomplished business leader, business executive, board member, author, and people-centered leader. He's had over 30 years experience founding, managing, growing, and leading companies of all stages. Craig recently, right now, serves as CEO of Premier International. It's an IT consulting firm. Craig has rocketed Premier into a phase of significant revenue and employee growth. I love these accolades, Craig. Best and brightest companies to work for in Chicago for 3 straight years. One of Crain's top 100 best places to work for 2020 and 2021. And most recently was made the Inc. 5,000 list of America's fastest growing private companies. Can I just say, wow, that's amazing. And thank you for joining us and sharing your story today, Craig. So why don't we start with first a hello, and can you share some highlights about your journey?
Of course, I'm so grateful for the opportunity to speak with you. Been looking forward to this for a while, so thank you for the opportunity. And thank you for the compliments. We're super proud of those accolades, and they don't come easily. We don't like to toot our own horn very much, but it's nice to have an opportunity to get some external validation of what we've known for a long time, which is Premier's kind of a cool place, and we do good work, and we have an amazing culture and team. You know, my journey has been an interesting one. I've been a data person for a long time, classically trained, I guess you would say, as a marketing and management person. That's what my education was. But data has been in my blood forever. And I've run small organizations and been a part of big organizations and have had sort of an interesting journey starting companies and leading companies that led me to Premier 3 years ago when the CEO and founder passed away suddenly, and I was brought in to help with that. I think about sort of what got me here, right? If you'd asked me 15 years ago would I be leading an IT consulting firm, I would say absolutely not. But I think about the things that sort of shaped who I am. And for a lot of us, it goes back to our childhood. For me, as a business leader, you know, I was shaped by my dad, who was a manufacturer's rep in the apparel business. So I would call that a salesperson. He would go and you know, had his samples in his car, and he'd go sell clothes for great brands all over the Midwest. But he would never call himself a salesperson. He always said he was in the relationship business. So I started out my formative years sort of understanding what it meant to build and have relationships. I think that's a big part of my journey, is understanding the role relationships play. And then in college, I had an opportunity to be a varsity cheerleader at the University of Virginia, a badge I wear very proudly, actually. It was a real neat opportunity to be a Division I athlete, but not have to play football or basketball or one of those hard sports. But I learned in those moments what it was like, especially cheering for a team that wasn't very great. You know, what motivation and inspiration took, what it took to move a group of people from one point to another, whether that be, you know, being down in the game, or whether it be leading 60,000 people in a pregame festivity, where I learned sort of how to public speak and how to present myself. And then most recently, I would say that I've learned a ton about what good looks like from my other bosses. And I hate to say it, but I've also learned what bad looks like. You know, a lot of leadership comes from sort of how you've been shaped. And over time, I've seen really great leaders that have helped me become a better version of myself. But I've also seen really bad leaders who I've said, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be that kind of leader who makes those types of statements. So I think about my journey. It's less about the jobs that I've had and a lot more about the things that I've experienced, the importance of relationships, the keys, the motivating, inspiring people, and to be able to look at other leaders and say, this is what I want to be like, and this is what I don't want to be like. And that sort of led me to this moment of being at Premier and really becoming what I think is the best version of myself as a leader at the tender young age of 53 years old. So you mentioned 30 years in my bio. I was like, oh, that makes me sound super old. So just 30 years, you know, plus 22 is only 52. So we're getting
there. You go. That's not too bad. That's right. That's right. Well, the seasoning is good because a lot of it is the stories. It's the journey along the way, right? It's not about the destination. It's about the journey. And I think with all that journey, and it is funny how it does start out early, doesn't it? And with that focus. And I think with the whole relationship piece, I'm sure you've seen that's part of building the culture that you have today. I'm sure that's a critical component of that.
It is. It's funny because sales is such a naughty word for some people. It's just, people don't want to be in sales. We run a consulting group, and that we're consultants, not salespeople. And you're absolutely right. But we're all in the relationship business. And what does that look like? And when you're building relationships, whether you're delivering services or leading meetings or even interacting with the office staff at your building, the relationships are what matter. And to me, that's what makes it a culture unique. Is how do you treat people? What kind of posture do you have as an organization? How do you treat employees, to the security people in your building, to clients and prospects and potential recruits? And again, learning that at the early age was, I think, an important part of how I shaped myself as a leader, and how I shaped myself, quite candidly, as a husband and as a friend and as a father and all the other roles I play. Because CEO is just one of the many hats that I have to wear on a regular and daily basis.
Absolutely. You've mentioned culture a few times, and the importance of culture and the importance of a healthy culture. What do you think are, based on your experience, there's some really good indicators of a healthy culture?
Great question. The reason why that's a great question is there's a lot of false positives out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can potentially indicate that performance is an indicator of a great culture. Well, there are some really bad cultures out there that have been able to, over a short period of time, have good performance. And I think when I think about healthy indicators or indicators of a healthy culture, I would look at a few things. I would look at retention rate of your people. Are you keeping your people around? I think that's a really key indicator of they're happy, they're well taken care of, you're challenging them. For me, another one is how authentic and vulnerable are we as an organization? How often am I willing to admit that I made a mistake? How often am I willing to say, I don't know? What do you think? And that comes from the top. I think if a CEO shows that authenticity and vulnerability, that's going to transfer down. Those are hard to measure. But for us, for instance, we do something called a Speak Freely. The Speak Freely is a monthly meeting in which we get the whole team together. It's not mandatory, but the whole team can come and we can talk about whatever you want to talk about. No topics are off limits. If we can't answer it, we'll tell you we can't answer it. I mean, there's a few things. I'm not going to tell you what someone's salary is. But if they want to say, why did we do this? Or what are you thinking about this? And how are we going to handle this? And those are the things that are on people's minds. And we've created an environment that's allowed people to have those conversations. It's not an anonymous suggestion box. It's people raising their hand in the meeting saying, I'm worried about why this is happening, or I'm worried about that we're not making this decision fast enough. And it's a challenging moment, but that to me is a measure of a healthy culture, when you can have difficult conversations, sit in the discomfort, and be able to kind of get through it together. Now, are there indicators? Are there real measurements? I think there are. We've just started using a system called Culture 5. It's from a company called Culture Think Tank, and I'm not here promoting them as much as it's just something we started because while we had great qualitative stories and anecdotes about the health of our culture, we had trouble quantifying it. And the Culture 5 is 5 questions that we ask every month that allow us to understand and measure in a quantitative way how our culture is doing. And we have a dashboard we look at, and every month in those Speak Freelies, I show the dashboard. There's no hiding behind the numbers. And we say, here's what you told us. And here's what we need to do as a leadership team. Here's what we're going to commit to as a leadership team, and hold us accountable for that next month. And we've just started using it, but it's allowed this company of engineers, these logical, rational, data-driven people, to have logical, rational data to say, here's where we can improve as a culture. Here's what we need and what we can do better. And sometimes it's hard to hear. It's tough to admit that we're not hitting on all cylinders, but this is what the tool is meant to do, is help uncover those places and help us authentically and vulnerably get to, where we can help solve them.
Yeah, I love it because too many times people think culture's one end of the spectrum, and then you have performance. And what it seems to me is that you're saying, no, culture and performance, they go hand in hand. And I think you've mentioned that you lead with culture, and then you find ways of, then what happens is that's going to lead to increase in performance.
It is. I let off, that you asked about healthy culture. I still off the fact that there were some false positives. There's lots of companies out there that have short-term performance that is hiding a bad culture. I would argue that those with good cultures are going to have sustainable good performance over time. And that's what we've seen at Premier. We're so excited to have been recognized by Inc. magazine in the Inc. 5000, but that's just an indicator of we have sustained growth as a company, and a healthy culture will do that. We're not losing people. We are gaining clients. We're doing really good work. And all those things are leading to, by the way, we have more revenue than we've ever had, and we're profitable, and we're able to invest in our people even more. So those things go together. And I do believe what you said is true. I think there are many people who think the culture stuff is all squishy and it's not measurable. And I disagree. I think the greatest indicator of a healthy culture is a place where people are staying and you're doing well and you're making money and people are happy, et cetera. And that's you can hide behind some of that, but at the end you can't. Those companies are not going to survive. It's
so true. And one of the things that we're hearing a lot about out there, it's the great resignation, the turnover tsunami, and you just mentioned that you're not losing people. So you've talked a little bit about culture. Are there any key things that you're doing even to proactively guard against that, or is that really just part of your focus on the culture?
Well, knock on wood. My last name is Wood.
Yeah, so I know. I was going to say, unintended.
For those who don't get that, we haven't experienced it, and I just made this comment yesterday, which is we're not seeing it, and that's exciting for us. And I would say a couple of reasons why potentially. Hey, luck favors the prepared, right? So at some point, maybe we've just been lucky, but I think we've done some things right. I do think part of our culture has been focused on hiring the right people and making sure they are happy here, well compensated, and that's really been our philosophy from the beginning. The founder of Premier had an interesting way in which he talked about it. His name was Jim Hempelman, and Jim would say, let's hire them right out of school before they have bad habits, was his quote. Let's train them on the Premier way, which is the things that we do and sort of the core essence of who we are. Take good care of them, treat them well, be generous with them, and they'll stay with you. And here we are 36 years later, 82% of our company has never worked anywhere but our company. The myth that millennials move around, may not be true if you treat them well. And it's just, we've just seen that's a recipe that works for us. We listen to them and we get their input, we learn from them, and then we act, we keep our word, and they have an end of the bargain, their hand keeping up, and we keep up our hand of the bargain. It's worked out to be an incredible, I'll say, family atmosphere. People talk about don't call your company family because you can't fire a family and you can't, choose your family. And those are all fair statements. But in reality, there's a familial atmosphere here, which, we care deeply about each other. We care about the work. We care about the company. And that translates into, sticking through with each other in hard times. When Jim passed, for instance, the death of the founder and CEO suddenly, you would think that would be a cause of concern. We didn't lose a single person for almost 24 months. People said we're going to stick around and make sure that Jim's legacy is honored. So it's that type of camaraderie that stuck. So I think we did something right 36 years ago when we started the company. I think we continue to do it right now. And I think we put a priority on it. We also have a huge posture of gratitude. That's the other thing I would say. We are so grateful for our team. We're so grateful for our clients. And when you exude that gratitude and appreciation, it comes across in how you reward them. It comes across in how you talk about them. It comes across in the handwritten notes you send. And I think that goes a long way. I think in today's society, not a lot of that's happening. And when you become a part of a company where gratitude is embedded in the essence of who the organization is, I think it's noticed and I think it's appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the areas that I hear from a lot of people, a lot of leaders, and a lot of people just in the workforce. They're like, I just want to be appreciated. We've all gone through a lot. There's a lot of stress going on, and even just a simple thank you, I appreciate you, does go a long way.
And here's the secret. You know this as well as I do. It's not that hard.
No, it's really not.
I mean, there's a lot that's hard in today's world. Saying thank you and being grateful and having a posture of appreciation is not that hard. And yet it's such a differentiator and it really helps companies be different than others out there. I think that's a a critical aspect of why people come and work for us, why they stay with us, and why people are so happy.
So, you were talking about just, hiring. When you take a look now and you say, okay, we're hiring new people, because obviously you're setting yourself up for wonderful growth. And I'm sure you want to continue that growth. What are some things when you're hiring people? What are 2 or 3 characteristics that you look for when you're hiring others?
So every job has skill sets you need. So we look for those skill sets, of course. Can they do the job? That's a given. And if you're familiar with the EOS philosophy, entrepreneurial operating system, here, do they get it? Do they want it? And do they have the capacity? And the capacity is a skill set. But I think the question of do they get it and they want it? We look at. I've always said we look. Prioritize attitude over aptitude. Is this someone that's going to live out the 6 values of the Premier Way? Are they going to go above and beyond, which is one of those values? Are they going to rise to the opportunity? So this idea that we can train them on our software, but do they have the mentality of what happens when the going gets tough? Can they overcome adversity? Give us an example of where you've done that. So I think that's a big part of it, assuming they have the basic skills. And then a lot of people talk about culture fits. Do they fit within the culture? We tweak that a little bit. We talk about cultural adds. Are they going to add to our culture? Are they going to bring a new perspective? Are they going to bring diversity, both capital D and lowercase d? Are they going to add something new to the Premier culture that we don't have today? And so rather than just looking for someone who fits, we look for someone who's going to add and it's going to bring new greatness to our organization. And I think those are harder things to measure, but we've got questions we ask and things that we bring to the interview process that helps identify those who we think will do that. And then we look for, if I were to talk to a young kid today, I would say we're looking for problem solvers. We're looking for people that know how to think, how to process information, how to take a bunch of disparate data, whether it be literally data or input from a client, and assimilate that and make something of it. And so less about what's your degree in and more about how do you solve this problem, or how do you think in a way that's going to make our clients successful, because ultimately that's what we're in the business for, is to make our clients successful.
No, absolutely. So you've got that. It's almost you take a look at the values. It seems like it's the matching with the values. I heard a little bit of, yes, you have to have the skills, obviously, the IQ and the EQ, along with really the attitude. It seems like that seems to be your kind of the package of what you're looking for.
That's a great way to look at it. I would say it's still more art than science. I'd love to have the perfect IQ, EQ test that we could give. There's just a gut feel. The beauty of having been around for a while is that I can look at my staff and my president, who's been here 23 years, they're hired right out of college, and his 5 direct reports who've all been here hired right out of college. Well, what did we see in them 20 years ago that we can see in people today? And we do have a great track record of hiring people and staying with us. So we try to replicate the success that we've had, but it's, that's not always perfect. And there is no perfect test or aptitude test or way in which we can say, yep, you're going to be successful here. It's a little bit of, thinking we know, but hoping that it's going to work out.
Absolutely. So we've talked about a lot of the great things. What are some things that along the way, even with this growth over the past years, is there anything that's been kind of hard, like the hardest part of it, or something you're like, wow, this is really tough. I didn't expect this.
Well, COVID was really tough.
Yes.
No, I'll be vulnerable on this one and talk about a couple of areas of my leadership that I think are hard. I can be too democratic, too inclusive. I know at times I want to get input. I want to make sure people feel like their voice has been heard, and that can be great, especially potentially if they haven't felt like they've had that voice before. But that can slow down decision making, and it can slow down, people's buy-in, because they gave you input and then you went a different direction. And wait, did you not listen to what I said? And so for me, one of the hard parts of leading people is knowing that balance of how much input's enough, while still making people feel like their voice is heard, but also moving at a pace and a cadence that is going to be appropriate. And I think that's something, I'll be honest with you, that I at times I can take too long to make a decision, potentially as an organization, not me myself, but maybe as an organization. The other one is one I've learned about and struggled with for a good part of my leadership career, and that's the balance between being liked and being respected. And I've always called myself, in a sports analogy, a player's coach. I'm the coach that people really like to play for. I'm not going to be the yeller, the screamer. And there are great coaches that have done that and have won Super Bowls and World Series and Stanley Cups, being the jerk that no one wants to play for, but they're going to win. The problem with being a player's coach is that you have to then have that balance, because there are times when the decision you might make may not have you be liked, but you need to do that to be respected or to move forward in whatever situation. And I think that balance is so critical. And it's a hard to do, and it's been really hard to do. Following Jim Hempelman as the CEO here. The part of the story I didn't tell you was that Jim was not just a CEO and founder of Premier; he was my father-in-law, and so I had this family connection, and to honor his legacy. And how do I make sure that I don't overstep the bounds of what he would have wanted, and how he would have wanted to do it, and yet knowing that we had more potential than we were maybe living up to at the time. So I think trying not to be too inclusive and trying to balance between being liked and respected. And by the way, I think you need both. I don't think you can just be respected and be a great leader. I don't think you can just be liked and be a great leader, obviously. The balance there is what's really critical. And what I think has been the strength of my leadership, but also potentially the weakness of my leadership is sort of when that's gotten out of whack.
Yeah. Our greatest strengths sometimes are our greatest weaknesses, right? That's just how it works. Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's interesting. I hear from a lot of leaders right now, especially, that their people are saying to them, I don't feel like I'm heard. I'm not listened to, because there's a lot about, are we in the office? Are we not in the office? Who's going to work from home? Who's not going to work from home? Any thoughts on that, or any tips for how can, what do you do so people say, okay, yes, I feel heard. Because sometimes you're not going to follow what they would like. So any tips for us on that one?
Yeah, I would say that we are very open about that. There are three things I would say that we do really well. We do gather input, right? So we will do a survey. We do this Culture 5 where they're anonymously telling us, answering those 5 questions. I think that's the fact that you're gathering data is important, especially for an organization like mine, who's a data-driven organization, right? I can say things like, hey, 80% of you wanted to be in the office 2, 3, or 4 days a week when we asked you about COVID. So we're now asking you to be back at the office 2, 3, or 4 days a week. For those of you who were not there because you wanted to be in less, let us tell you why we're doing it this way. And if we need to make an exception, we had to make a couple of exceptions. So I think listening is one of them. I think the second thing we do intentionally is to speak freely. We have these moments of authenticity. And while I'd like to say that every moment here is a speak freely moment, it's not, right? And we've got stuff going on. You can't always. So when we gather together and have these moments where we all put our computers away, we just have a talk about whatever's on your mind. I don't come with an agenda. I think those really spark an opportunity for people to say, yes, I got a chance to speak my mind. Yes, I was heard. And guess what? Other people are feeling the way I'm feeling. I think that moment, that sort of, we got the data gathering, but then this qualitative sort of what's the feeling of the company. And then lastly, we are very transparent about why we're doing what we're doing. We express the why when we make the decision. Here's why we are opening up a couple of days a week post-COVID. Here's why we've decided to ask for masks in the common areas. Here's why we took this piece of business. Here's why we didn't take this piece of business. So I think understanding and explaining the why has people hear, they had a chance to input for the data. They had a chance to sit through the speak freely. And now we've made the decision and they say, oh, I get it. I may not agree with it, but I get it. And I think that's the important part. One of our values, Karen, is one team united. We have these 6 core values in the Premier Way. And one team united is not that we're always going to agree on things, but we will always commit to being together on things. So we have this saying that I will agree and commit, or I will disagree and commit. But the commitment part is there. And that's sort of how we know. they know why we're headed towards the goals we're headed on. And some are maybe concerned or even, wondering why we're doing that, but they certainly understand that we are as one team headed towards this direction. So
Right.
those are the things I would say.
I like it. And I like it because two or three things here. First of all, the fact that you have values, and that, because many times people have values and they have it on the wall or it's in the drawer. It seems as if you're hiring to the values and you're living the values and you're holding each other accountable to the values, which is really important. And I love that, where I can speak freely, but then I need to commit. And I like that you're calling that out, because too many times, if you don't have that, right, people are they're gonna go say, oh, well, I don't agree. And they go and they try to undermine it. So I love it that you have that and you speak, that's how it is. And I would think then people can understand that they know they have the platform to disagree, but then they know that, okay, it's time for me to get on.
Yeah, we call those undermining things pocket vetoes. And we ask for no pocket vetoes, right? I mean, we'll sit and hash things out as long as we need to. And we want voices to be heard. And, there's been a lot of dialogue, excuse me, across society recently, whether it be about COVID or DEI or all these things. And there are different opinions and different voices. And now is the time to be listening for those things and to help people feel like they're being heard. It's when those conversations are happening in the bathroom or after work at happy hour that,
Right.
starts to get you worried. That I would say that's an indicator of an unhealthy culture. People are going to talk, but you want the important things to sit within the walls of this building and be able to toughly and discomfortably talk about them in a way that will move forward together as a company.
Right, exactly. And another thing I heard you say too, that I think is so important, it's when you as the leader giving feedback, right? First of all, people feel comfortable to speak the truth, have conversation. And then it's also how you respond to that as a leader. Because so many times, leaders will say, oh, well, I really want the feedback. I want the feedback. And then they get the feedback, and then, okay, it's hard, right? It's hard not to take anything personally.
Right.
So, it's okay. We've got, so it's also finding a way to respond. So where it's that you're not emotional about it, and then you're taking that feedback and doing something. Any tips you have on not taking it personally or things done along the way?
Oh gosh, that's a tough one. It's difficult for me. It's certainly, if you can put yourself in the person's shoes, like where they're coming from, it's easier to be empathetic, right? Why would they have this comment? It's not because they necessarily disagree with me or have an issue with me. It's more the last company they were at was this way, or the last client they worked on treated them this way, and they want to make sure it doesn't happen again. So I think it's hard to sort of not take it personally. If you can listen objectively, if you can understand more about where they're coming from and why this is a concern of theirs, and then you can authentically react to it, I think it goes a long way. I will tell you, Karen, I've had moments where someone has said something to me in a more direct or more forceful or even more personal way. I've stopped and said, I'm having trouble with this because I'm taking it personally. So let's step back for a second and let me tell you why I'm taking it personally, and let me help you rephrase it in a way that I won't take it personally, because I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to give you the reaction, the feedback that you deserve and that I think makes sense. And those are moments of great vulnerability and great authenticity as a leader, but it's the idea that you have to sort of know yourself well enough to understand that I'm not reacting to this well, and therefore, what can we do to change that? And I early on in the conversation today talked about the many hats you wear, right? You do the same thing as a husband or a spouse or a partner, as a father, and as you learn to raise children. I've got two 20-year-old daughters, 20 in their 20s, and I've seen me get better at listening and understanding and not taking it personally, and that translates into how I'm a CEO. And how I'm a CEO and what I do with my 55 people here translates into how I can be as a husband to my wife, Holly. And it's a virtuous cycle of sort of there is no Craig Wood CEO and Craig Wood husband. There is Craig Wood who has these different places that he serves during the day. And every experience I have and every way in which I learn from, I try to bring that experience to the next role I'm playing or the next opportunity I have, so I can be better, I guess is the word I would put.
Right. Well, it's how you show up, right? Every day. And you're right, you're leading in all these different areas of your life. And what I heard from you is it's trust too. I think that the fact people will trust you more because you are being vulnerable to say, oh, well, wait a minute. Right. And so because people then get a glimpse into you of, okay, I'm not taking this the right way. So let's back up. That then I think breeds trust with people, because then they also will step back a little bit too. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
too many times you don't
absolutely.
know what the other person's thinking.
And trust, that we really haven't touched on the topic of trust, but it's been an underpinning of everything we've discussed the last 30 minutes. It is. And trust over time is earned and increases, right? I didn't get trust when I walked in the door. I had maybe some blind faith that this was the right thing for the business, but I had to earn that. And you earn that both with what you do, but also, like you said, how you show up. And to me, I know one way to show up, and that's authentically Craig Wood. I'm not trying to be Jim Hempelman. I'm not trying to be Jeff Bezos. I'm not trying to be anybody. I'm trying to be Craig Wood. And authentically, Craig Wood is what I've described, right? He's a vulnerable, authentic former cheerleader. I see the positive in things. I want to be liked and respected. I have a democratic leader in terms of let's get some input from folks. I do like to empower folks and give them the opportunity to do that. So that's if I were to give one piece of advice to business leaders, it's spend time knowing yourself. How do you become the best version of yourself? And that's going to make you the best leader you can be. It means knowing what you are good at and what you're not good at. It's knowing what your team responds to and doesn't respond to. It's knowing when you're at your best, and gosh, it's knowing when you're not at your best. And I can tell you that I've been in roles that I've not been the best version of myself, and that was miserable for me. It was miserable for my team. I was not authentically myself, and I certainly wouldn't have appeared on your podcast about how to be a good leader, because I didn't feel like I was.
Right.
And that to me is sort of how you show up requires you to know how you want to show up and who you are, self-awareness, and you have to be able to give yourself a little bit of grace, because I will mess up. You will mess up. We all as leaders will make mistakes, and you have to say, that was a mistake, or I didn't think that through, or we'll do better next time. And the ability to give yourself grace and to extend that grace to your team is a big part of I think, being that best version of yourself.
So true. So true. Thank you. Great words to live by. We're learning every day, and I love it. So thank you. Thank you so much. Anything I didn't ask you that you'd like to share with us as we close this session out?
The only thing I will say is I am so grateful for what you're doing. I think during COVID, the spotlight has been put on the importance of the people side of the business. And as a CEO, there's so much pressure on results and performance and whatever the case is, publicly traded, privately held, whatever the case is. And I think what COVID has realized is that, or what COVID has helped us realize, I should say, is the important role that people-centric leaders play, that culture plays, that we as a business are much more than the numbers show. And I'm so excited to see people like you stepping up and offering advice and perspective and listening to leaders talk about that, because I think it's been, if not in the shadows, it's been a little bit of a smaller group of people talking about it. And now there's just a much larger group of people recognizing that today's leaders, EQ is going to be as important as IQ, as you said. And I'm grateful to be an early guest on your show. I'm grateful that you had the courage to do this and put this out there. And I'm really excited for your listeners to hear the premiere story, but more importantly, other stories that are out there talking about what does good look like, what does great look like in today's marketplace, and how can you try to strive for that.
Sounds good. Well, thank you. And I've been watching you from afar, and it's been fun to see your journey over these past few years. And it's going to be just great to continue seeing this amazing journey over the next months and years to come. So thank you so much. Thanks for taking the time, Craig.
You're very kind. Thank you for letting me be a part of this.